3 years later, they fired their Super Bowl winning head coach. They traded the highest paid QB in franchise history. And they traded down in the 2021 NFL Draft. What does it all mean now? Find out during the draft from the premier Philadelphia Eagles reporter, Derek Gunn. Watch, listen to Draft Takes with Derek Gunn across the JAKIB Media Network, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
All right, welcome back. I'm your host, Ryan Rothstein, on a Monday, back from the sports betting weekend, and here we go. Let's do it. Just a couple days away, finally, from the NFL Draft. And this week, we're locked and loaded at JAKIB Media. Make sure you are subscribed to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, JAKIB Media, the best NFL Draft coverage around, so don't miss a beat. Subscribe and stay up to date with all the latest news and notes for the NFL Draft. All right, let's bring in our NFL insider now, John McMullen. Follow John on Twitter at JFMcMullen. Birds 365, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. with Jody Mack. He'll be busy, but he finally sees the light at the end of the tunnel. Johnny Mack, how we doing, man?
Doing well, because I finally do see that light, Ryan. It's finally here. Finally. I feel like
finally.
The Rock.
I was just going to say that. Yep. As The Rock would say. All right, so where should we start? Is there anything that we missed from Friday at 7:30 to now at 7:30 for the listeners that you want to update us?
No, not really.
All right, well.
Continue that hype train in the silly season, and now we're rounding the corner. It was interesting. Kyle Shanahan spoke today, so he had his media availability late. Obviously, he's a key point, linchpin of this draft, because everybody knows Trevor Lawrence is going 1, Zach Wilson is going 2. So the first sort of at least a chance to go in a different direction is number 3 with San Francisco, and they moved up. And I think they're going to take Mac Jones. I think that's pretty clear. You don't do what they did, and they're trying to go down this road of we'd be comfortable with any quarterback. You don't give up what they did to go up if you don't have a player in mind. I think that player's Mac Jones. We'll see. But it was interesting because Kyle got asked, will Jimmy Garoppolo be on your team Sunday? In other words, will he be traded? And he basically said, he can't guarantee if anybody will be alive Sunday. So he went the all day-to-day route and refusing to guarantee Jimmy Garoppolo would be on the 49ers. And honestly, there's no reason he should be on the 49ers by Sunday. So we'll see if something happens there.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to answer that. We're all day to day here. It's like, okay, well, we know that. So are you going to trade him or you're not going to trade him? But nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many quarterback desperate teams, but there are different options. I mean, everybody looks at, I know Denver has a ton of interest in Teddy Bridgewater, their new GM. George Payton was in Minnesota when the Vikings drafted Teddy Bridgewater, so there's a history there. You talk about Garoppolo, so you look at teams. Obviously, New England has a long history with him, and originally had hoped sort of the timing would work out to go from Brady to Garoppolo, but Brady just kept playing really, really well. So the timing didn't work out there. Who knows? Maybe they can get him back. And obviously, if these teams go in different directions with veteran players, then all of a sudden you don't have quarterbacks or you don't have people going up in the draft to get quarterbacks. And it'll be interesting. I think, I don't think quarterbacks are going 1, 2, 3, 4. We've talked about that a lot, Ryan. I think ultimately, Atlanta's going to stay home and take Kyle Pitts. And part of the reason is San Francisco, because San Francisco gave up so much to get to 3 that Atlanta wants a similar type of haul for 4, and they're probably not going to get it. And then that's sort of where the fun starts, and that's where all the mock drafts, and my one and only mock draft, first round, is on Sports Illustrated right now. That's where they're going to all come off the rails, most likely.
Yeah, so let's focus there for a second, and you take it wherever you want to take it. The biggest, maybe audible that we can see that could impact the early first round Thursday night from 4 to 10, 3 to 10, however you're looking at it, biggest storylines, etc.
Well, I think it is Atlanta at 4, and ultimately I said they're going to take Kyle Pitts. Then you have Cincinnati at 5. I think they should take Penei Sewell. It makes more sense to protect the quarterback than anything else. But evidently Joe Burrow wants Jamar Chase, so they'll probably make him happy. I think that's a mistake. So you start looking at the other quarterbacks, and all of a sudden they're starting to fall. And, Carolina at 8 already picked up a quarterback in Sam Darnold. So if you're Denver at 9, you start thinking maybe you don't even have to move up. And you have that backup plan if things don't work out, as I said, in Bridgewater. So all of a sudden, you're sitting near Howie Roseman, and what the heck do you do at 12 if Trey Lance or Justin Fields falls? Now, I still don't think that's going to happen, but it's possible. I mean, I got the Patriots trading up, but I got news for you, Ryan. If the Patriots want Jimmy Garoppolo, well, they're not trading up to get a quarterback. So, Howie's going to be in this conundrum.
Yeah, it's
which I think is interesting.
It's very interesting.
2 ways from his standpoint you can look at it and say, you can pretend like you read the board perfectly and you got this tremendous value. Not only were you able to get a quarterback, but you were able to get an extra first-round pick, and he could spin it that way. But, it's not 3D chess. That's just circumstance, and it's interesting to see how things are unfolding.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's unlikely Fields or Lance drops, and I'm not saying that's crazy for you to say that, but we've seen crazier things. I mean, of course, all of the talk and information and resources out there seems like those guys are going to be off the board in the top 10, but it's very likely they're not. So I'm going to ask you this. Why would the Eagles get a quarterback? And I know the thinking of not getting a wide receiver is, well, they've invested at that position in the draft in recent years too much, for lack of a better way to describe it. Quarterback, if they end up going Lance or Fields, I understand if they feel like they're game changers, fine. But I don't know, man. That would be shocking in my mind, even if they drop and the Eagles go that direction.
Yeah, a little bit. The difference would be 6 versus 12, and there is a different sort of valuation chart when you look at players and say, well, if you think somebody's not worthy at 6, that doesn't mean you don't think they're worthy at 12. And as I said, I didn't think in a million years that any of these quarterbacks might be there at 12. So you kind of put it to the back of your mind. But now that you start to look at it, what I just said, again, if the Patriots, the Patriots have the history with Garoppolo, if they decide that's my guy, and it's not, believe me, I would not go that route. I think you know me well enough that I don't like Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit, but this is an organization that wanted to hand him the reins in the past. Maybe they still do. And that's what I said with Denver. Maybe Denver wants Teddy Bridgewater. It's not the way I would go. I'd rather have the young quarterback, but it's at least a potential. And if things like that kind of shake out, as I mentioned at the start with Kyle Shanahan, intimated that no matter what San Francisco says, they don't want Jimmy Garoppolo anymore, so they're going to move him. And obviously, they'll try to get as much as possible. But all of a sudden, if these quarterback-needy teams aren't quarterback-needy anymore, it stands to reason they're not taking quarterbacks.
We won't know if the Pats want Jimmy by Thursday. Does that mean the Patriots are going to try and make a trade for Jimmy before they get to their pick on Thursday night? Or because if
you would think in that particular instance, I mean, that they would want to know. They would want to know, are we going to be able to pick up this guy? And if not, then we have to go in a different direction. Then they'll likely try to go up and get a quarterback. I mean, a lot of it is timing. A lot of people ask why the Eagles trade out so quickly. Well, they had to, most likely, because of Miami's maneuvering and what they wanted to do. That was probably the deal on the table, and it was take it or leave it, and it might not be there on draft night. So, a lot of it's timing, and obviously the Patriots would want to have a clear indication of where they want to go. And they're not giving up a first-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo. So, is it a second-rounder? Is it a conditional third-rounder? Whatever. Yeah, they would probably want an answer at least beforehand, or if not beforehand, at least a firm agreement that says, if this happens or this doesn't happen, we're going to pull the trigger at this point.
Talking with John McMullen, our NFL Eagles insider. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. All right, so one more regarding the Patriots because I think they're intriguing. You hear people say, well, Belichick's never traded up for a quarterback in the draft. Well, he had Tom Brady. So does that sound like him or does it not sound like him, as best you can answer that?
Well, I Brad Spielberger from Over the Cap, he did the research on all the GMs and their history of as far as what they've done. And Bill's generally a trade down guy to amass more draft capital. His philosophy has always been, more lottery tickets, more chance you have to hit the home run. And probably him, the three most like that are Pete Carroll and John Snyder in Seattle always do it. Rick Spielman in Minnesota always does it. And Belichick always does it. So those are, and I mean, Howie likes to just move. It could be up, it could be down. But as far as, trading up, typically in a typical year, he would prefer to go down, if anything. But this is not a typical year. First off, the draft pool as a whole, because of the pandemic and because of the changes at the NCAA level, remember, they let a lot of guys have an extra year of eligibility. So typically we start this process with 1,400 players. This year it's about 700. I mean, it's terrible in later rounds. At least that's what everybody in the league thinks. So the normal rules might not apply as far as going down and adding draft capital. If this is any year, everybody wants to move up. Everybody wants to move up. The problem is everybody knows that. So I think fans assume, well, if so-and-so is not there, just trade out. That's easy to say, but you need two to tango. And that's always the problem.
All right, let's look at 10, 11, and 12 for a second, because that is the NFC East and their time to shine. The Dallas Cowboys at 10, the Giants at 11, and the Eagles at 12. You can look at that from any angle you want, but let's start there.
We just talked about GMs who don't like to trade. It's interesting. Jerry Jones is one of those, which kind of surprises, I think, people, because he's generally active in free agency. He certainly always wants to bring in veteran players with big names. But in the draft, he generally likes to stay put. Doesn't move up a lot, doesn't move down a lot. So I do think the Cowboys will stay at 10 and likely take the best cornerback available, which will probably be Patrick Surtain. And then 11, the Giants are interesting because I keep hearing from people from New York, they're going to take an edge rusher. And it's not going to be Micah Parsons. A lot of people have that. He's more of a three-down linebacker in their sort of evaluation. So you start talking about Kwity Paye, and I think that might be the first shock pick of the draft at 11, because I could see them taking Jalen Phillips, who is an interesting prospect because he'd probably be a top 10 pick on it, and he's that talented if he didn't have issues, but he had a lot of injury issues at UCLA, and he actually quit football. A lot of it, by the way, had to do with Chip Kelly, our old friends, because he stomped out the love of the game for Jalen Phillips at UCLA, and he transferred to Miami and found it again. But he also has a fledgling music career. So a lot of people in the NFL think he doesn't love ball. We'll use a Nick Sirianni term, and they're very wary of him. But man, he's talented, and he's talented at a position that people value. So I think that might be the first shock pick. But either way, I think the Giants are taking an edge rusher. If they want to be safe, they'll take Kwity Paye. If they want to just go for the ceiling, they'll take Jalen Phillips. And that's going to be one of those points where people kind of let out the gasp, I think, with the New York Giants.
All right, and you mentioned Parsons from Penn State, and I'll ask you one more time. Any chance the Eagles decide to go in that direction?
No, I just can't see it. It is a different regime. If you look at Jonathan Gannett's history, he's been in places that value linebackers more. So I think they'll value the position more. But look, they're not in charge. I mean, they don't have the power at this stage as a young rookie coaching staff. The guys who have the power are the same guys who've had the powers, for really since 1999. I talk about it all the time. In the Jeffrey Lurie era, it's changed from Joe Banner, Andy Reid to Howie Roseman, different coaches, but the philosophy has remained the same, and that's offensive line, defensive line, quarterback as the most valued positions. That doesn't change, and then you look at the board. The board's a little bit different because defensive line is so weak this year. We talked about the quarterbacks a lot. Still, probably they're not going to be available. So that leaves you down to offensive line, and that's not a glaring need position, although it's a sneaky need because of age and injuries. But you could argue I can tell you around the league, everybody thinks the Eagles are taking a cornerback or a wide receiver. And I would lean more towards corner. J.C. Horn is the obvious pick that everybody's kind of landing on at this stage. And we'll see. I mean, in my mock draft, I had Slater falling, Rashawn Slater. If he falls, I find it hard to believe that the Eagles would pass up on a player like that. They just find more value in that position.
Yeah, we've been talking, obviously, about what the Eagles will do here on Thursday a lot. And FanDuel now has much more up on their wagering menu. So I do want to ask you this. Philadelphia Eagles' first draft pick. J.C. Horn is the odds-on favorite at plus 280. Then, just like you said, John, wide receiver Devontae Smith is second favorite at plus 430, tied with Jalen Waddle at plus 430, Surtain plus 470, Kwity Paye 5-1, Slater 10-1, Parsons 11-1, and I'll stop here with Vera Tucker at 12-1. With that said, give me your three most likely draft picks as it stands on Monday night for the Philadelphia Eagles.
It would be Horn, it would be Slater, and it would be Waddle. Waddle is the one receiver I think the Eagles really like, and if he was there, they would really consider him. I think there's an outside chance he'll be there. I don't think he'll be there. A lot depends on what Cincinnati does, to be honest, because if Cincinnati takes Penei Sewell, that knocks Jamar Chase down to the Dolphins, and they would jump on Jamar Chase. But I do think if the Bengals take Jamar Chase, all of a sudden the Dolphins are sitting there, and they have to take the next best receiver. Ultimately, I think they would take Waddle over Devontae Smith. And if that's the case, Smith is going to probably be there for the Eagles, but I just don't think they're going to go in that direction, which is going to incense a lot of people, including my co-host in the morning, Jody McDonald, who desperately wants Devontae Smith. But prepare yourself to be disappointed, Eagles fans.
John, do we have to send out that preparation notice at this point? I think fans are more than ready.
I don't know. A lot of people, look, I get it. I say it all the time. I understand why people want skill position players. I mean, it's exciting. That's what you want. There's a lot of redundancy. Look, I always bring Jefferson up for obvious reasons because Eagles fans are obsessed with him. Two things about Jefferson. He had a historic year. Obviously, he's not going whoever the Eagles pick. If they pick a wide receiver, whether it's Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith, they're not going to have 1,400 receiving yards. But the bigger aspect to me is, okay, what did Minnesota do with the 1,400-yard receiver? They actually regressed because they didn't take care of the important positions, the defensive line most notably. They regressed, even with a receiver of that caliber. And even a better example of this, and I brought this up with you before because he's a first-ballot Hall of Famer, and the odds that any wide receiver is as good as Calvin Johnson is absolutely nil. And that's not an insult to anyone. They're just not going to be that good. By every empirical, points, statistics, play, Calvin Johnson was a home run as a second-round pick. But what did that do for the Detroit Lions over a decade? I think they made the playoffs twice.
I mean, I'm with you, and you're making some great points, especially with Jefferson last year. But I think there's points to rebuttal you, which is, all right, well, the Lions are the Lions. And I don't know, is that fair? But if you went Calvin Johnson, with a better organization, that reward would probably be greater.
And by the way, I'm not saying it's Justin Jefferson's fault the Vikings regress. I'm not saying it's Calvin Johnson's fault. I'm saying there's only so much a receiver can do. So yes, under a better organization that builds in a better fashion, if they had those types of players, but also did the other things, obviously they would help. I'm not saying they can't help, but my point is you need those other things. And a lot of those other things are actually a heck of a lot more important. That's the bigger point. Might not be as sexy, but they're more important. And that's that's the key to it all. And the Eagles have so many holes all over this roster, and they spent already over the past couple of years so much capital on the wide receiver position. I can't worry about the receiver position. I can't say we got to get this right till we fix it, till it's fixed, because then you're going to wake up and you're going to be in the situation Minnesota was, where you have no defensive line, you have no offensive line, and then it doesn't matter what the stinking receiver does. He might go off for 1,400 yards. Enjoy it. You win 6 games, which would be an improvement here, but nonetheless, you get my point.
Yeah, well, it would be another loss, too.
The example, 20-point, somebody's got to score on a bad NBA team.
Right. And I said, don't forget to add the loss now in the 17-game season. All right. Last one here for you on a Monday. Johnny Mack will be joining us every night this week at 7:30 like he always does. So plenty more draft preview and coverage for us to get into. The first 4 wide receivers drafted, exact order, John, because this is a popular bet.
It's going to be Chase, Waddle, Smith, and then is the key. That is the really difficult one. I think there's a chance at Rashad Bateman. I think there's a chance it's Terrace Marshall, who, if he's there at 37, I would like the Eagles to take. Elijah Moore. One of the out of the box ones is Rondale Moore from Purdue. I think if he gets to the Green Bay Packers, I think they might take him and shock people. So the fourth one is the key. I think the safe bet would probably be Bateman, the safest bet. But I don't think it's going to be Bateman. So if you want to win some money, go a little bit off. Could be Kadarius Toney. Could be one of the Moores. One of those slot guys.
Well, Chase, Waddle, Smith, Bateman, exact order. That's the odds-on favorite at plus 340. But Chase,
and that's the safe one.
Yeah, Chase, Waddle, Smith, and Moore has some serious value, 26-1, John. So
is that Elijah or Rondell?
That's Rondell.
Yeah, that's a good bet because I think the Packers are honing in on him, and get on that before people start to realize it.
Wow, the Packers might actually bring in some help for Aaron Rodgers this year.
Yeah, that would be scary with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Some of the unique things Rondale Moore. So that's why I think they're thinking about that, thinking and going in that direction. And we'll see. I mean, that's the problem. That there's a lot of teams at the back end that could think about receiver. And it's the old Howie Roseman quote: "What flavor do you like?" Because there's a lot of guys who could be in that conversation. And Bateman's probably the most well-rounded receiver of that next group. So that's why that would be the favorite because he's probably the best player. But if you're looking for a unique trait, which I think Green Bay would be doing at that point, because they have Devontae Adams, that's where I think you can find some value.
All right, John, in less than a minute, why don't you fill the listeners in on all of the draft coverage that you have going on this week?
Oh, man, a minute? I can't do that in a minute. Obviously, the most important part, Ryan, is I'm with you every night at 7:30 here on The Fix. I also think we're doing a live extending the play on Saturday. Still trying to work out the kinks on that. Obviously, Monday through Friday, you have Birds 365, 8 to 10 in the morning. We had Derek Gunn on. We had Jeff McClain on. We're going to have Les Bowen live from Cleveland this week. We're going to have Trey Wingo. So a lot of big guests coming up on Birds 365. And Sports Illustrated, man. I'm constantly writing there. So too much for a minute. I know. Hope I came in under a minute.
You just made it.
But I'm tired.
You just made it, John.
I got my second shot today, right? So, I'm crossing my fingers that I'm not laid up for 48 hours like Eitan Shander.
Oh, jeez. Shander's laid up? All right, not good. Nah,
he was. He was on that second shot. So he dared rip me. So far, so good. But, I got to knock on wood.
You'll power through. It'll be your Jordan flu game, worst case scenario, but let's not hope for that. All right, John. Thanks, brother. We'll do it tomorrow.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
There he is, Johnny Mack. All right, let's get into a break. We'll come back with Luke Pergandy, co-founder of Prop Swap. Much more still to get into here on The Fix, AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.
This is your VSiN Action Update on AM.
3 years later, they fired their Super Bowl winning head coach. They traded the highest paid QB in franchise history. And they traded down in the 2021 NFL Draft. What does it all mean now? Find out during the draft from the premier Philadelphia Eagles reporter, Derek Gunn. Watch, listen to Draft Takes with Derek Gunn across the JAKIB Media Network, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.